All systems go. Clear for liftoff.
Welcome on in, golf fans. It's your boy GS Luke here with our round 4 live stream for the US Open. Gonna get you guys ready for the final day of action, all of your lineups for tomorrow. But first off, a look at the weather report. We'll talk some strategy for Sunday, which a little bit different than the last few rounds with the placement points in play. We'll also go through any player deep dives, any questions that you've got for me in the chat, as well as some lineup construction and a look at a few of the different contests on DraftKings too. But hopefully this weekend has treated you guys nicely so far. You're enjoying the carnage, which today kind of got toned down a little bit with the rain that the golf course got, but we'll see what Sunday has in store. They've got some really nasty pin locations that they can use, and maybe Mother Nature will add on top of it as well. So we'll talk about all of that here, but first and foremost, let's have ourselves a Sunday for this US Open. We got Alan Kulitz down there. Welcome on in, a regular, and I appreciate the kind words. JM down there too. Also Ross, who says, let's have ourselves a Sunday. For the big guy, amen to that. Wayne seems to be a BDV fan. I won't read it, but greatest nickname in all of golf. Darren is looking for one of the guys up top to win, it looks like, and I don't disagree with that. But yeah, my heart does want a chaser to get into the mix too. We'll have to see. Sundays at major championships usually give us a whole lot of drama, so maybe it mixes it up a little bit. What's going on, to Peach? Yeah, you were out there on the golf course yesterday. Unfortunate that we couldn't walk into each other. I'm a pretty recognizable guy, so it kind of stinks that we couldn't, but maybe next time, to Peach. What's going on? Andrew Chief, welcome on in. See, you got a few 5 of 6s that zoomed up. Hopefully that continues tomorrow. That'd be pretty sweet for your exposure. We got Andrew down there too. He said Iron City versus Rolling Rock, and then Pierogi Plate versus Primani Italian. Now those are the real questions that we need in the chat, and we'll go Iron City first off, and then we'll go the pierogies for sure. I mean, you can't go wrong with some good old Polish pierogies, and then Iron City, just kind of a staple that we have around these parts. So welcome on in. Hopefully you're having a great day too. We're dried off. I need to take a shower after this though. I still have some dirt all over my legs and stuff. And it was a slog fest out there, guys. Super wet. Yeah, the fairways, obviously greens were super soft, but in between the holes, it was super muddy. I saw people eating shit the entire day. Looked like they were slipping on banana peels down the slope. Luckily, I paced myself, made sure I wasn't taking too big of steps because I didn't want to look like an absolute fool. So it was a lot of fun out there for sure though, but definitely a little bit wet. What's going on, Josh? What's going on, Junia, as well? We got Chris down there as well. And you said, should we be focusing on the placement points a little bit more? For sure. We're going to touch on that in a little bit more detail, but you're exactly right. With harder scoring, the placement points are a little bit more of a priority. Welcome in. We've got Steven down there too. Let's get this thing. So first and foremost, with the course conditions today, it played a lot easier in the afternoon, and it was really simple why. It wasn't raining during play. In the morning, it rained for the first few hours. It also rained towards the very end of the morning wave, and then the PM wave, not only was it a lot more clear, you did have a few showers that came through, but they were very brief. Enough to be annoying, though, for all of us fans on the golf course, but they had really soft conditions. Not only was there not as consistent a rain, they got to play after all of that came through. So the golf course was even more receptive than what it was before. And tomorrow, it does look like there could be some rain during play. Now, whenever we have these storms coming through, they can be hard to predict, both timing and whether they're going to have thunderstorms. But when we take a look at this HRRR model, from 1 to 6 p.m., they're calling for quite a bit of rain to come through and the wind to kick up. So if it's going to be windy and rainy for those leaders in the afternoon, then this could give us the drama that we're looking for. Now, if we take a look at some of the other models, they're calling for thunderstorms. This HRDPS isn't calling for as much rain as the HRRR. So, that one wouldn't be as much carnage, maybe a slight lean towards the morning there, but you do have some thunderstorms. I guess we haven't gotten to that one quite yet. This one, the Medio Blue, has those thunderstorms on the graphic. If they delay it, that would, of course, completely change up the situation. But I would say that there's a chance that the morning guys could get the better side of things. The thunderstorm, though, would completely take that away. So I think it's a little bit of an unpredictable situation. And something else to incorporate in, we kind of started talking about it with Chris's comment before, is that we have the placement points in play because it's a Sunday showdown slate, and they mean a lot at a U.S. Open. When we're at a golf course that's a birdie fest, maybe like we have at the Century Tournament of Champions, where scoring average might be like 5 under par, placement points mean almost nothing because everyone's scoring like 55 to 60 fantasy points. You're probably still going to need the leader for Sunday Showdown at the Century Tournament of Champions, but you're not going to have like the top 3, top 5 at this golf tournament, because even today when it played quote unquote easy, it still played 2.7 over par. Tomorrow with the Sunday setup, even with the receptive conditions, it probably plays 3 to 3.5 over par, maybe even worse because of the kind of setup that they're going to use. Placement points are going to be where a lot of your fantasy score is coming from, especially if you're trying to take down a GPP where you have to have the absolute nuts. You're going to need a lot of players that are going off towards the top. So even if there was a weather edge towards the later starters, and that's very speculative, that would be, counting for no thunderstorms and all of that rain to come through. Even if we knew that 100% ahead of time, we would still have to play 2-3 guys starting in the top 5, top 10, because those placement points are going to matter a whole lot. So it's not the kind of slate where I think you can go all in on the weather anyways, especially when the forecasts are really not aligning. Like, they're not all telling us the same sort of thing. What I will say is that if we look at the weather app, some of the other weather apps, I have like 2 or 3 on my phone. I was checking them on the Uber ride over here. They're calling for that PM weather. So they're not calling for thunderstorms. It was looking like just showers on a lot of those forecasts. So if that ends up being the case and we get this HRRR forecast coming to fruition, it could lead to a very interesting last 4 or 5 hours of this event. I would be a little bit annoyed on the golf course with all that water coming down, but it would definitely lead to some entertainment when it comes to those scores and some blowups. So that's the weather perspective. Nothing that I think you can lean into too much. But what I would say is that if there is a slight edge towards the middle to early starters, that would make it nice for your leverage plays, because even when you're using some placement point guys towards the top, you're still going to need 2, maybe 3 guys in a lineup to offset that ownership and get your leverage. It's nice to use early starters for that, because in general, they're going to be a lot lower owned. And if they get a little bit of a weather edge, maybe it's a half a stroke to a 1 stroke advantage. If that rain really causes havoc, then that could be a really easy way to get onto those leverage pieces. So I usually have a pretty balanced lineup construction when it comes to Sunday showdown slates, but especially when we get this same kind of weather situation. And this one's a little bit more unique because it's not necessarily the wind that is causing it. A lot of times on Sunday slates, we have the course firming up. Also, there are a little bit of higher winds in the PM for most slates on the PGA Tour. This one is because of that potential of rain, which today, just to go back to those averages, it led to a massive difference, a 1.7 stroke difference between the 2 different sides. Playing this golf course is tough as is when it's sunny, even with perfectly soft conditions. But if you're playing through rain and wind like they did at times this morning, then good luck. Players aren't going to be able to score very well out there. So that's what I would say about the round 4 setup. And what we're going to do next is go through building a player pool. So we mentioned the weather, some of the strategy involved with actually putting together lineups. Now let's figure out who the heck we're going to use for our builds. And there's a few different ways you can do this. Obviously, the shots gained metrics aren't the end-all be-all when it comes to building your player pool, but you can look at round 3 shots gained stats, also full event stats. That's something that we're going to go through here together. You can also look at course history players. You can take a look at round 4 historical. That's a great tool that you guys can find on the SHIPIT Nation Stone. Over there, you guys can get a sense for who plays their best golf on Sundays, which is a little bit of an art form when it comes to closing and that added pressure. You can look at some putting stats on the surface this week. We mentioned that as part of yesterday's live stream. The key important part of that is that you have a process for building your player pool. So we're going to spitball a few ideas of what you can look for in your plays, and I'm going to give you a sense of what I'm looking for in my plays for tomorrow, exactly what I'm looking for in the shots gained metrics, et cetera, et cetera. So let me go ahead and refresh this, see if we can get all the up-to-date information, which it looks like we can. And then we're going to start with round number 3. So we're going to go through the top ball strikers, also some of the players that maybe got a little bit lucky with the short game categories. And then afterwards, we're going to do do any specific player deep dives that you guys are looking for. So any of those, feel free to go ahead and throw those in the live chat, whether it's for guys up top, maybe leverage plays that you guys want me to go through. Just let me know. This time is yours, obviously. So let's start towards the top with our shots gained ball striking. So we'll add that to the chart over here and then sort by it. And this is going to be for today's round. So we're looking for round 3 poppers that might be able to continue that into tomorrow. If you haven't been here for a live stream before, I'll give you guys the Spark Notes version of why that's important, because the golf swing, how you're actually swinging the golf club, is the most consistent part of golf. So if there are really stat categories that we can hone in on, it would be off the tee and approach play. And that is what entails shots gained ball striking. That is just adding those two numbers together. So if we do so, you can see Terrell Henn is the #1 player in the field, and he's also sitting there at T6, so could be a juicy candidate for some placement points. Cam Young also hit the leather off the golf ball today. He lost strokes putting, so both of those players left some strokes out there on the golf course because they weren't making a whole bunch of putts. Chris Gotterup, #3 in the category, was slightly into the positive with shots gained putting, but I wouldn't say that was putting over his head or anything. He just kind of had an average day. Same thing with Haddon and Young too. It's not like they putted terribly, which could actually be looked at as a positive. A lot of times, we're going to get to the short game categories here in a second. We kind of look for the guys that lost a whole bunch of strokes around the green in the putting because it's not likely to happen in back-to-back rounds. But I would say it's an even better situation when that player is maybe slightly into the negative as opposed to losing those 2-3 strokes, because he's not nearly as lost. He was close. He was there at about a neutral to the field. And the rest of the game with all these sort of players, 5 shots gained to ball striking, 4 shots gained to ball striking with a Cam Young, a Chris Goddard up there, were some of by far the best numbers that you had in this kind of field. And you can see Ryan Gerard fits that same kind of stat profile, closer to 3.64 shots gained with the ball striking categories, but did lose 1.4 on the greens. So that might be more of a traditional short game regression candidate where, somebody was well below their baseline with their putting stats. But we'll get to that here in just a few minutes. But the rest of the ball striking stats for today that were kind of notable, in my opinion, was Carlos Ortiz, who had that nuclear round that we were hoping for. Of course, talked him up on yesterday's live stream as a potential high upside option. And he was about 10-12% owned in GPPs today. So he did have some steam behind him, which partially could have been my doing over there on that video. But at the same time, he paid off massively right at that sort of price tag. But now that he had that spike day and he's in that top 5, going to be super high owned, I'm not sure I love Carlos Ortiz nearly as much. And he did play really well with the ball striking stats. He was #5 in the field, but gaining 2-stroke short game and being that sharp off the tee and with the approach play isn't something that he does very often. So you got to remind yourself sometimes that this is only just one piece of the puzzle, right? It's not to say that I'm going to play everyone towards the top end of the ball striking list. In fact, I've already got my player pool up on my website. I already have all my projections done for today, which is, I know round only ended 20 minutes ago, but I was doing it as play was finishing. So it's not like it really was going to take very long after I got the last few scores into my spreadsheet there. But I can tell you that of these top 4 or 5 players, then I'm playing a good amount of them, over half of those top 5 players. But there are guys that I'm avoiding. And Carlos Ortiz, for example, is one of those guys that I'm not playing for tomorrow's slate. And a lot of it is because of the ownership, because towards the top end of the board, and I know we didn't really mention this explicitly before, but it was kind of implied because I was saying to look towards the earlier guys for your leverage plays. The guys towards the top are going to be super chalky. And it's like that for rounds 2 and 3 showdown when we don't have the placement points. But when you have placement points in play for Sunday, just multiply that by multiple folds. 2 to 3 times higher ownership on those guys towards the top. Sam Burns is getting close to 50% projected ownership. Adam Scott, JG Spawn, Victor Hovland, all over 30% projected owned. And that's even higher than it normally is, just because of people knowing that the placement points are a little bit more important. So unless you love somebody starting at T9 or better, then there are guys up here that you're going to have to exclude from your player pool. And for me, it's the guys that haven't been in contention at majors before. Carlos Ortiz never has. Thirsty Lawrence, he's been in contention one time before. It was at Royal Troon last year at a major championship. Spawn, right, he's kind of a new name towards the top as well. And he's a little bit short game dependent. Those are the kind of guys that I may or may not be fading for my exposure for Sunday. So it's that's the kind of idea that you could use yourself. But whatever the case is, have a process for building your player pool, right? You shouldn't just be picking names out of the hat. Speaking of, I also like to look at the full tournament stuff, which we'll do after we go through the short game stats. But just want to go through those rather quickly here too. So these guys that gained a whole bunch of strokes short game, it's really hard to repeat that in back-to-back days. So we already mentioned DeSpawn gaining almost 3 strokes putting being really hard to reproduce for back-to-back rounds. But all these guys that gained over 2 strokes putting, so Matty Fitz, Zane Hoot, JT Poston, Wallace, Norgard, English, Novak, etc., are all players that, unless their ball striking was really, really solid, right, makes up for the fact that they were short game dependent, they're going to be spots that I'm crossing off. So, for example, a JJ Spawn who only gained about a stroke ball striking today, that's a spot where it's a tough scene for me to want to play him, because if he only gains a strict ball striking again and then is a neutral with the putter, that's not going to be enough to pay off that kind of price tag. Like, there's going to be somebody else, or those -2s, -3s, -4s that goes out there and shoots something more respectable that you're going to have at that portion. I just can't see all of them struggling, every single one of them shooting like 4 or 5 over par. Whoever shoots like even -1, -2 wins this golf tournament is the guy that you're going to have. So I also mentioned that with these placement points too, is that you're not just going to get it handed to you, you're still going to have to score. Like, there's no one that's that far ahead where they can just shoot like +1, +2 and kind of get away with it. Your players that you're using towards the top end of the board still have to do something respectable to get to that optimal lineup. And then I also like to look at the around the green stats. So people that maybe chipped in a few times. So a Chris Kirk, a Tony Finau, probably not going to do that well around the green very often. And this is less so important than the putting. The putting is the one that has a little bit more volatility. But these short game categories, and just to give you guys the Spark Notes versions of why we kind of fade them rather than look at them with the ball striking categories, is that making putts, chipping in, a lot of times just comes down to luck of the draw. Whether you hit a spike mark or not, whether you end up getting the pace perfectly right, which if you've played golf before, it's not a science, right? It's a complete art form that we have on these greens. And sometimes it's just the way that you're seeing the greens. Sometimes just the feel for the day, whatever the case may be. These guys will gain 3 strokes putting one day and then lose 3 strokes the next, and vice versa quite often on the PGA Tour. That's why we're looking to fade a lot of those sort of players. And like I said, the exact opposite is true as well. So a Colin Morikawa that was pretty decent ball striking but lost almost 4 strokes on the greens, that's the kind of spot where I might take a bounce back at super low ownership, especially as a pivot towards the top. A Tony Finau at +10, like, you're not going to get placement points there at all, but ball striking stats were okay today. He's like a neutral there, and then lost 4 strokes putting. He's probably not the best option for tomorrow, but like, he could be a bounce back candidate in theory. Brooks Koepka, probably the best of the short game regression candidates, just because he did gain 1.6 strokes ball striking. And it says he lost on approach, but I watched a lot of his round in person, and I can tell you that he hit the ball fine today. I really don't understand how he lost strokes on approach. He hit almost, let's see, how many greens? I guess it was only 10 of the 18. It felt like a lot more than that. Sorry, I'm looking at the wrong one. He hit 83% of his greens. Okay, that's correct. So yeah, look at this, guys. He hit 15 of his 18 greens, yet he lost strokes on approach. I'm not sure if the PGA, the USGA, whoever puts together these stats that Data Golf is using, did them correctly, because he was really good with his approach play today. Hit a bunch of fairways, hit a bunch of greens, did everything you need to do at a US Open setup, but he just could not buy a putt. I mean, I'm talking every 20-footer he missed. He 3-putted 4 times on the day. Realistically, everything but the putter was perfect. I thought he played one of the best rounds of anyone I saw on the golf course. Those are the kind of players that I could be looking to for a bounce back. And if you can't tell, I think it was blatantly obvious, he's definitely going to be in my player pool. So those are the things I'm looking for from the round 3 metrics, but I also look at the full event stuff. So I want to take a look at this as well. And it's really for the top end of the board. So if I'm trying to take the guys that I want to use as my conviction plays at super high ownership, then I'm going to vet them a little bit more than the rest of my player pool. I think if you're looking for leverage plays, the round 3 stats are a good place to look. Round 4 historical is good for that. High upside players, that's another aspect of what I look for. Course history, another thing that I look for in my player pool in any given slate. But for the guys up top that you really want to be sure of, this is just another added little part of your process that you can add on top and refine your player pool even more. So if we take a look at the top end of the board, like JJ Spawn gaining 2.6 strokes putting per round, that feels very unsustainable. A Thurston Lawrence gaining 2 strokes putting per round, that screams unsustainability. A Robert McIntyre, a Cam Young being so putter dependent, you don't love to see that either. I do have to say that of those 2 players, I'm playing one of them in my player pool. So it's not a death sentence, right? Just see one piece of data, right? That's not going the right way on a player, but it is a death sentence if they're high owned. You have a couple data points that are working against them, and you didn't love them heading into the slate, then yeah, maybe it is a death sentence and you take them out of your player pool. But it doesn't have to be the end all be all just based on one thing that you're looking at. So I think if there's anything to learn from this live stream, to take away from this segment in particular, it's to be very well rounded in what you're looking for. And not every play has to be perfect. I want to stress that as well. If you're trying to take leverage plays for round 4 and to offset any placement point chalk that you're playing, you really want to explore the guys that are going off early, the mid-tee times that we were potentially could even get a weather edge, right? If it's super rainy during the afternoon, because not every play has to be perfect. And you're going to get guys that randomly go off on Sundays that maybe even had a horrendous round 3. And, Cam Davis, he's somebody I'm playing, for example, tomorrow, and he's plus 19. He's in dead last place. He's not giving you any placement points. That is abundantly clear starting at that kind of score. But do you know why I'm still using a Cam Davis? The or he could factor, as my guy James would say, is definitely the main thing you would say. But also, he's one of the top birdie makers on the PGA Tour. He routinely outscores his placement position with the amount of birdies that he's going to post. And yeah, at plus 19, he's not going to care about making bogeys, but that's okay for DraftKings purposes. So, like, if I'm going to play the nastiest of all nasty plays and like a Cam Davis, then you might want to consider playing some pretty nasty plays yourself. And maybe you don't get that grimy because he stinks. You probably don't want to get within a 5 to 10 foot radius of Cam Davis with how much that he stunk it up this week. But like, you could find some loser down low that you could take at super low ownership and offset a lot of that chalk towards the top. So don't be afraid to get grimy about it. And like, I talk about my process here quite a bit, right? We outline it every single slate. A lot of you that are regulars probably already know what I'm looking for in my player pool before we even do these live streams. But have your own process as well, because when you get on to players, you don't want to be sharing them with a whole bunch of the field. And the more and more content I do, right, the more and more people that are going to start to follow onto, similar sort of mindset. It kind of stinks that I have to give away the nuts, but it's what I do here, right? I've been doing it for a while. It's all right. I kind of know what I signed up for when I made a YouTube channel and started doing DFS content and whatnot. But if you have your own process out there and you've found a lot of success, you don't have to share that with everyone else. You can kind of keep that to yourself and use that to get onto grimy plays down low. That is very viable. I have friends, by the way, that I don't ever share their edge because it's not fair to do so. Even with my content, right? It wouldn't be fair to take their edge and implement it myself. But I have ways to get onto some pretty nasty plays down low that has worked out for them. For example, and we talk about it as a bit on this show all the time, but like my guy Nick, LSU Nick, always plays guys that are going out by themselves. And does that always work out for him? No, but it does give him access to low-owned players all the time that are going off first and dead last place for any given slate. And every once in a while, he hits on that sort of player. And, when you hit on that sort of player at sub 1-2% ownership, then that's how you have a chance to take down a GPP. So shout out to my guy Nick. I know he won't mind me mentioning that because we talk about it all the time on these live streams, but that's just one example of that sort of thing. And if you have that kind of thought process yourself, don't shy away from it is what I would say, right? Like, just because it's not something that I'm doing myself or that you hear other DFS players doing for themselves, it doesn't mean that it's correct, right? But don't be afraid to try different things like that and to try and find some of your top plays. The other things I'll notice with the shots gained metrics up top would be that Victor Hovland has been striping it all week and also losing with the putter. Same thing with Carlos Ortiz, which does have me thinking that he's going to be a little bit chalkier than even maybe where I have him. I have him at close to like 20% projected owns, but because he's so ball striking heavy and that is such a well-known established narrative in this industry, he might even be closer to like 25%, I'd say, and maybe even above 25% projected ownership in some of those single entry contests. So you do have to kind of use ownership, kind of think about that as well when you're going through these players. But like a Victor Hovland, it's going to be hard for me not to want to have like all the Victor Hovland tomorrow. He is in my player pool. Just kind of figure out how much I'm going to be using personally. But a few other kind of metrics that stand out. Victor Perez, I know he had a disappointing day, but he is gaining 2 strokes approach per round. He did have the hole-in-one, which offsets it and kind of throws it off a little bit, but that's rather impressive. Rasmus Niergaard Peterson, long name there, also has been ball striking heavy this week. Ben Griffin kind of doing his thing. Those are the kind of things I'm looking for in the shots gained metrics towards the top. So we'll do any player deep dives that you've got for me now. Then afterwards, we're going to round this off with some strategy on DraftKings and tie it all together. So where did we leave off? A lot of comments, it looks like, but I want to make sure I don't skip over any player deep dives that you've got. Let's see what's going on, Adam. You said you're not sure how much salary I leave on the table, but would I consider doing it to get unique? I would. I'd say Sunday showdown slates are really the only slates where I leave a lot of salary on the table. Normally for round 2 and 3, it's at most $200, $300 that I would leave on the table. And it wouldn't even be on purpose. I just allow my optimizer to leave up to that much on the table to get to more combinations. But for Sunday showdown, especially on a slate like this, where placement points are a bigger deal, it would be something I'd explore in my single entry builds, because even GPPs too, because it does give you a way to not duplicate yourself as often with other lineups. The issue is that it doesn't give you leverage though, right? You still have to have players that go off, that have that spike performance to get there. And even if you're not going to duplicate yourself, if you have like all 30% owned players, you're not really going to have leverage against the rest of the field in lineup. You could have the absolute nuts, right, as a lineup that's not duplicated, but it's not really giving you that leverage aspect. So I'm okay with it, to make sure you're not duplicating yourself. But, at most probably like $500. I wouldn't overdo it. It's just you're giving up a lot of projection a lot of times, and you're not going to be able to fit in as many placement point guys if you do so, because they did price up a lot of those players heading into Sunday. He said, should you throw a 10 spot on Scotty at plus 5,500? I mean, it's a long shot for him to win, but I've seen crazier things happen before. And I'm not having the same sort of vibes as I did at the Players Championship a few years ago. One of my all-time calls was on a live stream for Sunday. I think Scotty was like 7 back, and I called him winning at the end of that day. And it wasn't like a soft call for winning. It was like a hard call, calling my shot, like Scotty wins tomorrow kind of thing. I don't have those same kind of vibes here, because the key difference is that he hasn't looked good the entire week. His irons, his off the tee play has been off every single round. But the scary prospect is that he's in the top 20 and he's played terribly the entire week. He's close to the top 10, in fact, and he's played pretty terribly for all 3 rounds so far. I don't know if it's a smart bet, right, to bet it at plus 5,500, but I do think that there's a chance he gets into the mix. It would probably require some carnage at the top for him to actually win, but he could definitely get there as like an optimal showdown play. And if there's a slate where Scotty Scheffler smashes, it is on Sundays. He is by far the best Sunday scorer on tour, and I believe he's the best scorer on tour for like 3 of the 4 rounds. So maybe it's not that crazy, but he is that player on Sunday that gets it done. Will Goddard and Cam Young get some steam for sure? They're towards the top, especially Cam Young. Cam Young was popular this week for a lot of people with how he qualified for the US Open. Also his really solid finish the week before that. So yeah, Goddard too. I mean, I got Goddard at way higher ownership than everyone else down low. Super cheap too. He said you would have shipped if you played Spawn over Henley. Hey, good luck next time, I guess, man. But that's those were 2 chalky guys that I wasn't on. So I was not in that same kind of situation choosing between those 2. You've backed Burns outright. You really fear Hovland, but still confident he can do it. Yeah, I mean, I'd be confident if I had the guy at the top end of the board after 54 holes. Good luck, man. I mean, you mentioned that the other day, so I remember that with you, Jack. It's probably been a heck of a sweat over the last few days or so, huh? How low in the current position will I be looking at for chasers? You're going to have to let me know what you mean by chasers, because, I mean, there's no real cutoff in my player pool. I'm going to have guys for leverage like Cam Davis that are plus 19, literally in dead last. You'll have to let me know what you mean by that. You said Ben Griffin killed you today. He didn't even play that terribly. I don't know how he killed you, Mario. I didn't play him myself as he was donkey chalk, but he played a lot better than some of the guys I used. So I don't know if I'd be complaining about Ben. He probably lost on some other guys, frankly, not Ben Griffin. He made, I think, 3 or 4 birdies, a lot better than a majority of the field did. He said, Alan says, Luke, how do I feel about Seabez? He seems very under the radar. Under the radar for sure. I mean, no one's talking about him. He's sitting there at T11. So all these T11, these T21s, I don't think you're going to get their fair share of ownership because everyone that's playing the placement point guys, and we'll put them in quotes because you still have to score well to get those placement points, are looking at these T9s or better. And especially these guys under par. I told you I have them all at 30% plus projected ownership, some of them even over 40%, like Sam Burns at the top end of the board. These guys at T11, T21, they're still higher owned than a lot of the rest of the board, but they're not nearly as chalky as what they normally are. Like normally at tour events where it's like the leaders minus 16, like maybe these guys at like T21 are like, I don't know, like minus 11 or something like that. They're like 5 shots off the lead. Usually in that case, these guys are still chalk. And that like T11, that T21 range, in my projections, they're not chalky. And I think partially it's the psychology of having these guys under par as opposed to all those other guys over par in the player pool, but also the fact that people think these guys up top are like locked in for placement points, and they're not. I mean, if they shoot +3 and they end up at like even par, like that might end up pretty decent. It might end up in like the top 10 or whatever, but a +4 and then top 10 placement points isn't going to be anywhere near an optimal lineup. It's not even going to be close to it. With a scoring average of like +3, you're going to have to shoot at the very worst even par, I would say, if you're starting at the top end of the board. And that would be like a 4 birdie even par, which, by the way, isn't even that terrible. Like even if you shoot over par, let's say like +2, +3, but you have 4 or 5 birdies, that's going to be close to getting it done in Showdown. And I know that sounds crazy because at most slates, we need 7, 8 birdies. We need a -5, a -6 round. But this is Oakmont and a golf course that plays +3, +4, right? It's just a much different situation than most slates. Decky to the Moon, I don't know about that one, man. He's a tough scene, but there's always the or he could on those sort of players. And I will say his first 7, 8 holes, I was watching him on the broadcast. He hit a lot of really good iron shots, a lot of good shots in general. He's one of the best players with their ball striking, but he was just horrendous on the greens. He didn't make anything from 5 to 10 feet. He even had a few 3 putts that were uncharacteristic. So it's I don't know, a very sketchy play. I don't know if I can get there myself. I'm not playing him tomorrow, but there's the or he could factor, right? You never want to completely cross somebody off because it's golf, an extremely variant sport. You said you played Decky today. It happens. Don't sweat it. I'm not going to sweat it at all, my man. You clicked them into your lineups. I don't feel bad whatsoever about pointing out shots gained metrics. And I don't know, when you say stuff like that, right, you're inherently trying to make me feel bad with that comment. So it's just kind of like wild. But you said Oakmoss destroyed you, the best plays this weekend. Yeah, it happens sometimes, man. Like, don't get too down about it. And maybe you weren't, maybe I took that the wrong way there, but it's a difficult golf course. Like good plays on paper are going to flop. I mean, look at the top 5, top 10 in the official World Golf rankings. I think half of them missed the cut to start. And then outside of that, Scotty's, I think the best out of all of them, sitting there close to the top 10. It's it's an unpredictable golf course. So, and you don't got to leave comments like that are passive aggressive. You know, I sometimes I take them the wrong way, but sometimes they're just unneeded, right? What's going on, Steven? It says breaking. Rory's still a LPOS, as some people would call him. He said the big guy, his truth is marching on. Yeah, he's definitely in his own head. Him not wanting to talk to the media after rounds, I guess he tried to explain it a little bit today. I didn't like his response. He's just got to be super blunt with it, right? Like I know he tried to say like, oh, I'm not happy with the media. Then just like say exactly what you want them to do then. I think that would work off a little bit better. What's going on, Goku Lex? Griot with the deep dive. Let's do it. Rounds 1 through 2, he was one of the best ball strikers in the field. Today, it was okay ball striking. He gained on approach, but he lost a little bit off the tee. Overall for the event, though, I mean, excellent stat profile. He's gaining 1.5 strokes per round ball striking. Putter has been a lot better than it's been recently, though. And just to show you what I mean, if we bring up the stat profile for Miliano, putter's been into the negative for like 2-3 months at this point. So that kind of scares me off of him a bit. I am still using him in my lineups, but that would be the one negative about Griot, because all week, other than that, though, there's really nothing to complain about because his ball striking has been the main reason that he's played well. Without he had that one big spike round putting. That's why it's so into the positive there. Is Reed worth an ugly play tomorrow, especially without the round 4 data? We have So you mean the like historical data, I guess, right? On that sort of player. Yeah, like I've seen a lot worse plays. I mean, I liked him heading into this week. So I guess I have to say that, yeah, I think he's a decent, ugly play down low, because if I liked him heading into the week, sure, maybe he hasn't had what I wanted to have happen this week with like a top 20 finish, but he's still a quality player. He's still one of the top 10 guys on the Live Tour this year, which, I'd say top 5, top 10 over there is at least somewhat respectable. I mean, look at Carlos Ortiz. He's up there in the top 5 of this event at this point. It's a real ugly play for sure. So you know that ahead of time, but I don't think it's the worst thing I've ever seen. And he said, who's the donkey chalk? Yeah, I've got you. So the donkey chalk, I would say, are the guys that are over 30%. So that would be a Hovland, that would be a Sam Burns, that'd be a JJ Spawn, Adam Scott. I have it about 30% projected owned. Those would be the main ones. And then you have like a tier below that of guys that are close to 20%. That'd probably be like your okay chalk. So it's mainly those guys that are towards the top end of the board. Watching on playback, sorry if it's already talked about. Can I do a deep dive on Day? Yeah, all good. And we haven't done the deep dive yet, so I definitely got you, man. So he's gaining across all 4 stat categories today. And for the entire event, sorry, he was actually slightly into the negative with the putter, I suppose. But if you take a look at the entire event, he's gaining across all 4 stat categories. So that's what I was referring to at first. But the kind of guy that from the stat perspective, 6.5, 7 out of 10. It doesn't like outshine everyone else up top. I would have preferred him to maybe be slightly more ball striking heavy than what he is right now. But being solid across the board is also a very good thing of its own. Shows that you don't have many holes in your game. And the one thing about Jason Day that you can't say about a lot of the rest of the top guys at T21 or better is that he has experience in this situation. Day has experience, Keegan has experience, Brooks has experience, Scheffler does, even though he's young. I guess we'll say that he has experience in these major championships. Hovland does, and then Adam Scott does up top. All these other guys, T21 or better. So that's 28 players, by the way, up there at the top end of the board. It's not to say that they're all like in contention for the first time in a major before. Some of them, though, it might be like the second time they've gone into that situation. But the rest of them, yeah, it's their first time ever finding themselves at the top end of the board at a major. I like the guys with experience, and you could definitely say that about Jason Day. So not only the shots gains profile is decent enough, right? He's gaining across the board. He's got that going for him too. Same thing with Adam Scott. It's an intangible, but this golf course is absolutely brutal. How much more am I taking placement points tomorrow? A lot more, but not the end all be all. So like normally I want 2-3 guys starting at the top at least in every single lineup. It's 3 or 4 this time around. So hopefully that gives you like an idea of how you should be weighing it. But like you need at least 2 to 3 guys in your lineups to offset that chalk too. So it matters more, but it's not like you can go too overboard on it, if that makes sense. Is playing all morning guys a bad idea for single entry, or is placement point that important? Yeah, going all morning guys, probably not the best idea. If you're going to pull that off, you'd have to have all guys that shoot under par that are going off in the morning. And the situation where that might pay off would be if there was carnage in the afternoon. If that storm comes through, there's no delay, and it ends up being like a 2-stroke differential. That, though, is a very low percentage outcome. If you're okay with that, you're okay, burning money on fire most times, because most of the time you do that, you're not even going to cash because you don't have any of those placement points towards the top. But if for some reason we get some crazy conditions towards the afternoon over there, then it could make a little bit of sense. So you might want to check that out. Guys in the middle range who could make a move up the board. We went through a few of them, James. So hopefully you have some candidates at this point. But not really. I'm not really the biggest fan of like just giving away a player pool. We'll go through the shots gained metrics and do it that way. Though. What's going on, Joseph? Deep dive on Tom Kim. Let's do this. So Tom Kim, good old Tom. So we've got ourselves gaining off the tee, losing on approach for the entire event, and then a little short game dependent. Today, though, and this is why I like him for tomorrow, he gained off the tee, and then he gained with the approach play. So I would say that today was by far the best round that he's had so far. Round 2, 4 strokes around the green. Yeah, no thank you. And then round 1, he was also even a little short game dependent. He's a 6.5 out of 10, I'd say. And because he's low owned and towards the bottom and super cheap, I thought that was enough to want to play him. Burns and Hovland, probably the most popular. I agree with that. And just to go to the lineup construction, because I think that's a good thought process to go through. When people are starting their lineups, $9,000, they're probably going to want to spend there. Maybe they go to Victor Hovland. If it's not Hovland to Burns that they're using, maybe it's Hovland, Spawn, Adam Scott. that you're using as your first 3 players in. But even then, you still have $8,000 remaining. So I think you might be right there, right? Most people might just spend all their salary on these like top 2 players, maybe use a Spawn, a Hatton, or an Adam Scott as their 3rd man in this sort of lineup. But even then, you still have $7,800 remaining, which means towards the top end of the board, you can get some leverage with a few players up here. And if you guys have seen my player pool, if you guys are a part of my Patreon page, you can see everything I have on there. There are some guys towards the top. I'm just saying this, these guys that you can see here between Rory and I guess Sander, these 3, because these are the 3 lower owned guys here, and I'm playing 2 of those 3 players in my player pool for tomorrow. So because the salary is pretty spread out, you don't have to spend all of your money to make lineups. You're going to have the ability to kind of get cute with your spend ups and take some players that in some cases fit the stat profile that we're looking for tomorrow. And I guess I'll just spill the beans. Xander, damn good ball striking today. Colin Morikawa, he lost those 4 strokes putting, probably not going to happen every single round. I don't know. Could be a way to get some differentiation in there. You're good, by the way. I kind of realized halfway through that I didn't think you were being like a dick about it. So you're good, Ryan. No worries about it whatsoever, like I was saying there. The Tambo 2v2 switcheroo for Hov and Burns could be the right construction. I think so, man. Wait, you're putting it backwards on that? What are you doing? Yeah, I think those 2 are going to be popular though. But does Tambo do that? He swaps them and then says that might be the most popular. So that's kind of funny. This track methodically taking names, it does, dude. It's just that kind of golf course. He said, apologize if you missed this player, but can I look at the stats for Grayson? I absolutely can. So let's get to the right tab so we can type in his name. So for the week, so this is over the first 3 days, he's gaining tee to green. That's great to see. And then today, he was also solid with the ball striking stats. So I'm using him in my lineups. He's towards the top. He's not going to give you like a bunch of differentiation, but like I was saying, these guys at T11, the T21s that are close to the top end of the board, but aren't quite in that top 5 yet, aren't getting as much steam as they should. And in my opinion, he's one of those players that you can use there. Might even be the best Tom Kim round in a couple months, and he's still shot over par for sure. It's crazy. This is just that kind of golf course. Yeah, I have nothing to say there, man. You hit the nail on the head. He shot over par, and it was the best round he's had for quite some time. I do have to say, though, I can't wait for Tom Kim to start playing some solid golf again. Just an absolute legend, great character that we have out here on tour. Kind of miss him getting into contention in these big time events. J-Day outfits never disappoint. Yeah, we've got the Malbon now. I don't know if you guys can see it. Malbon hat obviously is in view there. People were asking me if I knew Jason Day on the golf course today, because I guess if you wear Malbon, apparently you have to know Jason Day. Funny stuff, if I have to say so myself. But let's go through these contests and then wrap it up with building a lineup to kind of tie this all together. But the contests are even bigger than round 3. So if you guys liked the contest selection yesterday, you're going to like it even more this time around. The sand trap is 400K. It's still 100K to first. So a slightly better payout structure because it's not 33% to first place anymore. This drive the green is also a little bit bigger. However, it's more top heavy than what we had for rounds 2 and 3. So, the trade-off here is that, yes, you have a 20K prize pool to first place. However, you have to beat 19,000 other entries, and the rest of the top 10 payouts are really, really crappy. Like first and second are great. Second place, $10,000 is also maybe a little bit higher than it should be. But once you get past that, you're not going to be getting anything that is all that significant. So I would say that these GPPs are top heavy to try and entice more people to play. But my favorite contests that you can enter for tomorrow would be things like this long drive, where this is an even bigger single entry than what we always have. Normally it's like a 20K or a 30K long drive that we have for round 3 and 4 showdown. But this time it's a 40K contest, and it's only $5,000 to first place. So it's an eighth to first, which is pretty close to the best payout structure, the optimal payout structure that we can find. We ideally want it as 10%, so that would be $4,000 to first place. But this is a much flatter payout structure for the rest of the top 5, top 10 than what you had in some of those top field GPPs, where it was 25% to first place. And if you go to the 10K dogleg, this is also a lot bigger than what we had for the last few days. This one is 10% to first. That is an ideal payout structure. But you also have this $12 albatross, which is also a little bit larger and also 10% to first place. So we point out those contests all the time as some of the better ones that you can enter. You also have a few more contests that we don't always see for Showdown posted. So the $250 Formax that is a regular now, a staple of the Showdown slates, that one is a 6 to first, which I have to say the payout structure on this $250 Formax is better than normal, because usually it's like a 30K contest and still 10K to first. So it's like 30% to first. Now it's only a sixth. So I think a little bit more reasonable there. But you also have like this major moment here, which is a 17 max, $600 entry. So it's way above my pay grade at this point for what I'm going to enter tomorrow. I play a lot of Showdown, but I don't quite play at those stakes yet. Maybe when we win the lottery someday, or start to make a little bit more waves out here, we can start to max enter, like, what is it? Like $11,000 for every single slate. We're not quite at that point yet, but yeah, if you're a big roller, I guess you have that for tomorrow. You don't always see that kind of contest posted. You have this 10K long drive. This club twirl, I've seen a lot of people having success with that. It's a 16 entry, $44. So if you're looking to get closer to like a 20 max exposure for slightly higher stakes, that's a pretty good contest to get into. It's a kind of top heavy, but not top heavy enough that you have to avoid it. Let's see, is this the 18 max? Yeah, this is the $10 18 max. This is DGen's baby, as he called it before. This is a great contest to enter, because this one is also 10% to first and has the flat payout structure. And just like that 16 max contest that I just pointed out, it gives you a few more bullets to go out there and enter. And let's say that you're not somebody that has an optimizer, but you don't want to only enter single entries. That's what these 20 maxes are great for. And I don't always point out the 20 maxes because they're not anything I like to play. I just go to the 150 maxes if I want to play multiple lineups. But let's say that you're not an optimizer bro like myself. You don't really want to learn a process right away. Like maybe eventually you want to learn how to use an optimizer. Always something I think that will improve people's results long term when it comes to playing DFS. But if you want to hand build slightly more lineups, that's what these kind of things are for. So check those out if you're looking for some GPP exposure, some MME exposure with mixed multi-entering without going to some of those single entries. But that's the idea when it comes to choosing the right contest. Don't enter a lot of those top-heavy ones unless you're okay with entering a top-heavy contest. The ones that will be better for your long-term bankroll are the ones that have that flatter payout structure. And then the last thing we'll go through on here would be to go through the lineup construction segment. So, I mean, we've already mentioned it quite a bit, but it's about balancing the ownership. And what I like to do on Sundays, which makes my life a little bit easier, this is at least how I choose and I prefer to build my lineups, is to start up top with the placement points, get an idea for where my chalk is going to come in, and then get different a little bit further down the board. And what I want you guys to notice here, and this is really important, guys, okay, is that you don't want to start with this kind of lineup. Let's just start it right there. Do not click the top 5 players and then try and go, oh, I'm going to get different with my one last player. Because guess how many people are going to have a lineup that starts with these exact players and then rounds it off with Victor Perez right here? I guarantee you this lineup is entered more than 200 times in all of those big GPPs. And if you're the donkey that is entering this sort of lineup for Sunday Showdown and thinking that you're going to win a lot of money long term, then just don't do that sort of thing. And I guess I'll be the person to tell you that that is not the strategy, because even if you happen to win, which would require all these guys to play well, it would require there to be no carnage at the top end of the leaderboard. First off, do we think that's even remotely possible? It's not. Somebody's going to choke tomorrow. It's Sunday at the damn US Open at the hardest golf course in the world. You would be a complete fool to think that everyone's going to go out there and play perfect golf. Today, they almost did, by the way. The guys at the top played some of the best golf we've ever seen from guys at the top. To do that 2 days in a row is just frankly impossible. It's just not going to happen. So you don't want to start with those guys at the top because they're all like 30% owned anyways. But if you do this kind of sort of lineup and you duplicate yourself with a million other people, that's terrible. And even if you were to start with these top 5 and maybe don't use the chalkiest guys, maybe you went down here to like a Rasmus Niergaard Peterson or like a Grazerman who's slightly lower owned, you're still going to duplicate yourself with a whole bunch of other people. So what is a better idea is maybe you take like one guy here starting towards the top. So I'm going to throw in Adam Scott because I think he has the most experience and that matters at a very difficult major. I'm going to throw in Tyrrell Hatton, who's a little bit lower down the board. And then my other placement point guy, we're going to drop down here and take Jason Day at $7,400. So we have one guy starting in the top 3, one guy a little bit further back, and then one guy outside the top 20 to start, where I'm going to use those as my placement. So Adam Scott probably going to have to win. Maybe Tyrrell Hatton ends up pointing it off. Maybe we can get like a -1 round or an even par round out of Jason Day, and he can crack into the top 10 that way. If he makes 3 or 4 birdies with an even par round, that would probably be enough to get there. And then for our last 3 players here is where we want to get a little bit different to the rest of the field. So let's throw in Xander Schauffele at $9,800. I really like how he hit the ball today and just how in general that he's trending. So in Jordan Spieth, he also really hit the ball well today as well. And those 2 players, they're studs. They're guys that project well. They're going to give us differentiation, though, because they're not nearly as chalky as guys like Sam Burns and those other players towards the top that are getting all of that kind of attention. And then for your last man in here, you can maybe take a placement point guy if you wanted to. So like if you wanted to round this off by leaving $200 on the table and play Cam Young, you might be able to get away with it. But what I would prefer to do here is to take a third pivot, right? To go 3 and 3 for a lot of my large scale GPP builds, because it ensures that I'm not going to duplicate myself with other people, and you still have to score. Placement points are part of the process, but they're not going to be what you have to have at all 6 spots. So like, there's a time and place for maybe using a Cam Young, maybe even dropping down here to play a Carlos Ortiz and leaving those $300 on the table. But you're going to see more lineups in my portfolio that rounded off with a Patrick Reed or a Ryan Fox, who's one of the top birdie makers on the PGA Tour, or a Matt McNeely, who also makes a lot of birdies compared to his peers. Those are the kind of guys that I'd prefer to cap off this kind of lineup with. And another thing to point out is just how different that lineup construction can be when you're not starting with the same core of 4 players at the top. And I can't tell you how many people are going to start with these 3 together. Let's even throw in Victor Hovland there. It puts you down to $7,600. This combination of 4 exact players is going to be used like 25-30% of the time by the field, and if you know that, by the way, you know that this exact core of 4 players is going to be used that often. Maybe not quite 25%. That's probably a little bit of an exaggeration. I've got them all in that 30 to 40% range. So more realistically, maybe 10% of lineups going to end up using all 4 of these players together. If you're playing a 2v2 versus 10% of 20,000 entries, so that's 2,000 entries, and you're playing a 2v2 versus 2,000 people, good luck. Like seriously, you'd have to have just the absolute nuts early guys going off, and you'd have to have all 4 of these guys not choke at the top end of the board, which is also just hard to imagine at the US Open Sunday, the hardest major that we have. That's why you want to avoid that sort of lineup construction. So, and you see it every single Sunday Showdown slate. If you guys go to the duplicates, if you guys just take a look at the leaderboards and try and find all the people that have the highest score to start the slate, you'll see that it's a duplicate train of hundreds, even sometimes thousands of people when we get really massive slates. So that's all I've got for round 4, guys. Best of luck with everything that you guys are doing for tomorrow. And let's cap off this week the right way. It's a major. Let's enjoy all the action out there as much as we can. It's carnage. It's definitely a golf tournament that has gotten the best in the world for sure. I mean, top 5, top 10 in the world, nowhere to be seen at this point. But every once in a while, we've got to have a surprise major champion. We've got to have a slate that's a little bit grimier than most, and that's what we have this time. And it's not always like that. A lot of times these majors are very predictable. It's a lot of chalk that goes off. It's a lot of the guys that are like 5-1, 6-1 that are cashing outrights. Like I know we had somebody in chat with a Sam Burns outright. I think in my the chat I was doing yesterday in my prop stream, somebody had a JJ Spawn outright. I know Victor Hovland. There's a few people out there with tickets on them. Like they're not always going to have a chance to win a major. And this week, they've got a damn good chance to go out there and cash that thing. The only guy towards the top that I don't think I have seen a ticket for would be Adam Scott. I'm sure there's somebody out there that's got an Adam Scott ticket that is going to be sweating that out tomorrow as well. For my money, I think Adam Scott wins this thing. And it's a little bit of a gut feeling. Like these guys, these great players, future Hall of Famers, which I think you're crazy if you think that Adam Scott's not a future Hall of Famer. Towards the end of their career, the great players usually go out there and get one more big golf tournament. I mean, this would be that for Adam Scott. If he's able to pull it off, it would cement him into the official World Golf Hall of Fame. At this point, I think he's like a 60-40 split, maybe even a 65-35 split into getting into the Hall of Fame. I'm rooting for him for sure. It just feels like he's the one that's deserving. He's played some of the best golf the entire week. He has the most experience around Oakmont. He's played here, I believe, 5 times now. It's either 4 or 5 times now that he's played at Oakmont, which is just ridiculous to even think about that he's had that kind of longevity. Let's enjoy it, guys. Whether you're at the top end of the leaderboards come the end of tomorrow or towards the very bottom, it's have ourselves a Sunday. So best of luck out there, everyone. I'll go over any last-second questions, and then we'll round off the Speak the Right Way. Smash the like button if you guys haven't already. Go ahead and do so if you guys haven't already. Let's catch up on the chat, though. So where do we leave off? Tom Kim going back to the Travelers. Ooh, hey, if he plays another good round, Ross, I might bet him outright next week because we know last time around he got close, wasn't able to get the job done against Scotty. Could be in for a little bit of revenge this time around. Had a decent day in Showdown. Thanks, bud. Of course, man. Let's run it back tomorrow. You said Michael Kim coming in clutch with the pin locations. Yeah, you saw that. He's been doing it all week. So I'm assuming you're commenting that because he did it again, which in that case, that is fantastic. Good old Patty Reed. Okay. Yeah, only 32 likes. We got to pump up those numbers, like my guy Joseph was saying. Max 2 people of the top 6. I think that's a good way to go about it. I would say max 3 would be like the hard line. You went at most 3 of those guys. I think my preferred lineup construction, I don't think it's like a mortal sin to go out there and play 3 guys up there towards the top, but I prefer only 2 of them just so that you can get some of those T11s, T21s in there. I just don't see the entire top end of the board holding on to their position. So yeah, I don't think that's a bad idea. It is going to take you out of some lineup constructions, but maybe it's a good thing, right? It'll get you onto slightly lower product ownerships than what you otherwise would have. I appreciate you, Robert. Thank you for the kind words. Let's have ourselves a day. Stay hydrated. I've got a little coffee here myself now, but we'll definitely have some water out there. And yeah, yins, as you say around here in Pittsburgh, are having a heck of an open. And I agree with you, man. Adam Scott should be in the Hall of Fame. If he gets it done tomorrow, there will be no doubt about it. He'll be a first ballot Hall of Famer if he ends up becoming a multiple-time major champion. So that's part of the reason I'm rooting for him, man. I want it to be undisputed at this point. He's a great player. I mean, won Masters. He should be a multiple-time Open champion at this point too. It's about time he gets one to go his way rather than going against him. And if it happens to go against him again, I still think he's a Hall of Famer. I still think he's one of the best players of our generation, and he still deserves his flowers, even if he can't get it done. He said he heard Scott has played in 90-plus majors. Yeah, man. In fact, they had a crazy stat towards the top. They said, I think it was the guys T9 or better, that all of them combined have less major starts than Adam Scott has in his career, of all of them combined. So, I mean, that just tells you everything you need to know right there, right? He's been around the block. He's been in contention dozens of times in majors before, truly in contention for 5 majors to actually win the damn thing. Maybe he gets number 2 this time. And he said, can Spawn actually hold on to win? Yeah. I would love to think so. I thought he might pull it off at the Players Championship, but it's his first time in this situation. Usually first-time contenders and majors don't win, which is the crazy part about this. That is why I think Adam Scott has the leg up here, because Sam Burns has never really been in this situation, especially as the leader after 54 holes. He's going to be feeling it tomorrow. JJ Spawn, the same thing. Hovland, he's been in the fire a few times, but he's not as battle tested as like an Adam Scott. That's why I think he's the guy to beat. At least if I was the odds makers, I would have Sam Burns as the favorite because he does have the 1-shot lead, but Adam Scott would be like my clear number 2. In fact, his odds, if I was running the sports book, wouldn't be that far behind on what you have for Sam Burns. So if that gives you guys an idea. I appreciate you. And he said, great show. Good luck tomorrow. Amen to that. But that's all I've got. Best of luck, guys. And I'll see you guys for the rest of the content this year.